and then we're just chilling. Okay. Hello, hi friends. I'm Ashley Ariana. Welcome back to the show. Today I am joined by Jose Sanchez. We are going to be recapping the 49ers Browns game for you and the disappointing loss, but the things that we thought we learned from it and how the 49ers will go into the rest of the season, hopefully better than ever. But starting out, Jose, I wanted to say happy Tuesday, and it's not a great week to be a 49ers fan. We lose to the Browns, and then yesterday on Monday Night Football, the Cowboys win. So it's just we're doing terrible. But last week when you were on, I think it was on Monday, and you were telling me about some of your bets. So I was wondering, how did you do? How did you do
We're not
yesterday?
talking about those, okay? That's in the past. We don't like to
I
cuddle
just want
with
to bring it
healed
up. I want to
wounds.
get you heated.
No, because then
Did you think that? Did you bet on the Chargers? I feel like this is your fault. You, the Chargers
uh
are gonna lose. The
well,
Chargers are
they
gonna
covered
charge
for
her.
me. They covered for me on an alternate, but I bet the over. And the over did not hit.
No,
It did not hit
no,
on total points. It was very disappointing. I
no.
was hurt. Now the mafia is
Both,
looking for me.
yeah. Both quarterbacks performed kind of bad. People were trying to say Dak Prescott was clutch, but that very last throw that he did would have been terrible if
No, he
Justin
was
Herbert could
whatever.
have gotten anything going. But ironically, Justin Herbert is considered a top 10, top 5 quarterback in the league, and he just had a really bad performance. And so that kind of leads me into sometimes quarterbacks, no matter how good or bad they have bad performances. And Brock Purdy had a terrible performance on Sunday. There was a lot of other factors that contributed to why he did so poorly, and we'll get into all those. But he was off. It was not a good day for Brock Purdy and for any of the narratives that we were going over last week. Uh, Definitely don't think he's in that MVP conversation. Maybe some people got a little bit too ahead of themselves. But how do you look at Brock Purdy today after this game? Do you look at him any differently?
No, just that he's human, and like I think we talked about last week. One of our topics was like about him being elite, which was obvious. Is like he's not elite yet, and there's still a larger sample size. But yeah, he's human. But I guess during the week where everyone was just pretty much jock riding him about being assistant quarterback, they kind of felt a little validated, even though it was only 1 week.
Mhm.
I mean, look, in a way, it was kind of to be expected that him and the 49ers offense were going to be stagnated that way because it was a good Browns defense. I'm pretty sure, like I was emphasizing last week, and you were saying the same thing, like, oh, yeah, they were better defense in Dallas, so it should be more of a tougher challenge for them. And then even we were saying, like, this is probably the real true test. And it's like, yeah, it's definitely a harder one, and it showed out to be that way. So for him, it's like I didn't necessarily anticipate him being as bad in that style of ways in terms of he was just missing throws like crazy. And I know people want to point out like, oh, there's no Deebo Samuel. There was no Christian McCaffrey. There was no Christian McCaffrey until the fourth quarter. Let's get that straight. Oh, it was
Yeah.
raining. Okay, it rained for like a
That's
quarter.
that's an important. I feel like when people point out the excuses,
They
they leave out.
generalize it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, he was out for the fourth quarter. And before that, outside the first drive, they were ineffective running the football. It didn't work. I mean, it was as simple as that. Like Purdy pretty much came into that day and we just didn't have it. So to me, it's like even if you had those two players, it's like what did that have to do with him missing throws? Because he just didn't have it. You know, it gave me a little bit like almost Garoppolo vibes, where it's like, all right, we got to see if Garoppolo's going to be having it today or not. And that was pretty much with him. He was so volatile. I was like, all right, which version of Garoppolo are we going to get today? We can get the one who's like on the money, like making the offense stay on schedule or whatnot. Like, and Purdy, you know, he is a little bit of a ceiling raiser on that offense, and we didn't get that. And, you know, I'm sure, obviously, you know, when you lose two superstars, it does, like, obviously dampen your offense a little bit. But to me, it's like, what did that have to do with him being overthrowing certain guys or missing on the target so much? And, you know, it was fine. It was one bad game. It's fine. Now it's about, all right, how did you bounce back from it? I feel like this question will definitely be more relevant next week when we discover, okay, fine, you had a bad game. It's fine. You know, I mean, hell, we just seen the Jets go through a gauntlet of elite quarterbacks that they made look average. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, like so many of these guys. So elite defenses so far in this league through 5-6 games have had the had the leg up on all these guys. So Brock Purdy, nothing to panic about. He was bad, you know, rightfully so. He gets emphasized as the quarterback, but ultimately, like, how's he going to bounce back? I think that's when we're really going to learn next week.
Definitely like learn something about his grit and maybe about how next week I think will be an interesting test to see actually how what Kyle Shanahan and his response is. Like if he goes into this game with like an ultra conservative game plan now, like does his confidence in Brock Purdy shake at all? That will be an
Mhm.
interesting question. I do think that we maybe learned the Browns defense, and Jim Schwartz has always had Jim Schwartz specifically is now 9-1 against Kyle Shanahan. So definitely had his number. And they played a lot of man coverage against Brock Purdy, which seemed to kind of shake him. And I was curious. I feel like you hear rumors as fans of the NFL about this and about the Shanahan system, kind of giving the keys to the quarterbacks. This was a big thing with Sean McVay and Goff.
Mhm.
People would say that Sean McVay would tell Goff like where to go with the ball ahead. But obviously, if you're playing man coverage, you have to wait until the ball snapped because you have to see which receiver is going to win. Do you think that the man coverage played like a significant role in maybe what was stumping Purdy instead of being able to decipher pre-snap where he was going to go with the ball? That was also a big problem with Jimmy Garoppolo. I've heard people say with the Shanahan system that throw to the linebacker, the reason that that can happen is because quarterbacks in that system are taught, throw a ball to a place, throw a ball to a place.
Yep.
And so when you get one of those wild throws and you're like, there's obviously a linebacker there. Why would they throw it there? It's because they didn't expect that linebacker to be there. They're expecting something in the system went wrong, and they're not really taught to like think on the fly as much. They're more taught to run exactly the exact right play in the exact right timing. And if that gets a little bit messed up, that's when you can see some of those wild plays. Well, if that's true, then potentially switching to a more man defense against a quarterback like that can take away some of the help that he might be getting from a Kyle Shanahan and from that system. I know you and I were talking a lot about debating if he was a system quarterback or not, and we kind of said, yeah, but he's also really optimizing it. Do you think moving forward that more teams will try to play man against Brock Purdy? Now, obviously, I'm getting in the future. We'll talk about it. Might depend on what if CMC and other players are out, because it's
Right.
obviously a lot easier to play man when you're down so many guys. But do you think that that was a bit of a maybe people keep saying like the book is being written on Purdy? Do you think that man coverage was like a little key to maybe stopping him sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always a proponent of I love man coverage, but you have to have the right secondary for it. And the Browns probably have the best secondary in the league. That's part of why that the defense was so good. That was one thing that stood out to me. It's like, hey, like their pass rush is definitely an uptick, at least better than Dallas, but also their linebackers and especially that secondary. I mean, the Cowboys without Trevon Diggs is like nothing. They had Diggs and Gilmore, and other than that, it's like their safeties or whatever versus like the Browns, like they just have like they're just kind of loaded on that front where you definitely can match up against the 49ers wide receivers, which the force receiving core is solid, but it's not like necessarily elite by any measure. It's a solid one and it's doable, especially when you mix it in with Kyle Shanahan's system. So that's correct when you're saying like, why do you throw it there? It's like, yeah, it's about timing and it's clicking. It's kind of the same way why he excels throwing the ball so deep. It's because he's timing it. He's not necessarily eyeballing it, and it's not like he has the arm where he can really zip it in there. He has to really afford that click, so he has to really see it almost like 2 seconds before and kind of throw it before. That's part of why of its limitations. So man coverage would probably be somewhere to beat him, but I think that's where it also makes it easy. I think that's the one thing that really made it stand out the most between not having McCaffrey towards the end and Debo throughout the game, because now it's easier to man up. It's like, oh, now we just got Ayuk and George Kittle, who, by the way, George Kittle is just pretty much an unofficial lineman now. I think after this game, they kind of finalized it. Even when he exploded against the Cowboys, he was pretty much just in for like just goal scoring opportunities. He's not really there to really like slice and dice a defense like that. So I think that's
Why
pretty
does
much how
Kyle
it
do
is.
that? What is your opinion? Why does like I don't think at this point, as a fan, I don't think you can say that it's George Kittle's old and not able to do it, because when he's given the opportunities, he's showing up in the big moments. Now, maybe they're conserving him, but this would be a situation. Okay, you're conserving him. Now you need him. So now utilize him. Why do you think, I know this is a little off topic. Why do you think that the that up and down happens so much with George Kittle and Kyle Shanahan not bringing him in? Okay, Debo's out now. let's utilize Kittle because that worked that helped negate Dallas's pass rush. Why would you not do that to help negate the Browns pass rush? I felt pretty frustrated. I think he got 2 targets. One there was a penalty on, so like he only got 1 real target. Very weird.
Yeah, he only got 2 targets. Honestly, I think the whole like Purdy was under pressure like a ton of the time. I think it was under what 40-45%. That's a pretty significant amount when you're damn near half the time like facing pressure. But I don't think that necessarily was the whole reason that derailed that offense. I mean, it's just look, the Jim Schwartz has had a perfect game plan. Sometimes you get beat. There's too much like everything that I've been consistently hearing from everything, whether it's like online or what people I know, it's always like Shanahan should have said this or this player should have did that. Freaking Moody, da da da. And it's like hey, sometimes you just get beat, man. Why? What's so hard with giving credit to the other side? And I think that's almost a little bit like the hater mentality. It's like, why can't we? It's okay to look at the other person and said, you beat me, you got me, you were on it. Well done. Shake your hand. Good job. Will you get me next time? We'll see. Because ultimately, the Browns a better team? No, but they had them they were the better team that day. So to me, it's just like, yeah, maybe Shanahan should have used Kittle more, got him out because it's like, all right, I lost my 2 best receiving weapons and Debo and Samuel and McCaffrey after Ayuk. Maybe I can roll out Kittle out there. Maybe he couldn't afford it because I wasn't so much focusing on him, so I can't really have the answers to that necessarily. But to me, my theory was always like, I think the reason why they weren't using Debo and George Kittle so far in the season, because outside of that Giants game, Debo wasn't really making too much of an impact aside from being a threat, right? But I always said that I think it's because it's a little bit conservative in those two since they're always the most dinged up. That maybe like once it starts getting in mid or later parts of the season, or if it's a game where it's going to be contentious, like this one, that's why we saw McLeod get utilized heavily. It kind of indicates almost that maybe it was going to be a Debo Samuel heavy ran game. That I think unless it's a contentious game or later to the season, that's when he's going to start taking like, taking the armor off, taking the Saran Wrap off and be like, okay, now go out there and get hurt because now's the point where I need to win games. I need to get you revved up because too many times throughout the years, right? We see Debo and George Kittle out early, injured week 4 and out for 4 games, something like that. And it happens like clockwork. I mean, Debo's already hurt again. George Kittle pretty much barely walked into the season healthy. So that's always the case that I would like to see more. But, in terms of the loss, like it's just, I'd rather just ultimately like, yes, I've been harping on Purdy was bad because no duh, he's the starting quarterback. You have to emphasize that. Everyone was bad, of course, collectively. Brandon Ayuk had a bad drop on that touchdown pass. I mean, running game, it's just ultimately I just rather give more credit to the Browns in that defense because that's kind of was like the slobber knocker game that I saw. I'm just really surprised that the 49ers defense wasn't as dominant as I thought they were. I mean, they were great. They were fantastic. I just thought they could have done more, which, the refs kind of screwed them over several occasions on that end. But, hey, typically kept the Browns.
The 49ers defense did give up, I think it was 160 yards rushing, which is a lot for them. I think that's the most they've given up this year. And the last 2 years, they've been like top 5 in stopping the run. So I think that was kind of a shock, but you're right. They still held the Browns to 19 points. So you think at that point, if you expect to win on the road, I feel like you expect to score more than 19 points.
They did their job. They did their job.
Yeah.
The defense. I have no complaints about them, even though there was some things to nitpick about.
Yeah. When diagnosing or when assessing who do you think is the most to blame for the loss, you gave a lot of credit to the Browns and said, okay, maybe this is less of a specific, subject or specific part of the 49ers. Maybe it's just that the Browns did so good. But then that kind of leads me to, okay, maybe are you more blaming the O-line for that immense amount of pressure, or I'm still of the mindset that I feel like I'm blaming Kyle for not adjusting well enough to the losses of Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and adjusting to the pressure. I think there was a lot of play calls that took way too much time for Brock Purdy. And in the face of pressure, you would think that Kyle Shanahan would know to give him some more like quick, easy outs. I know that they were trying to use Ray when Debo got down, and they ended up going away from that because I think upon rewatch, he like ran the wrong way a different time. So he was definitely not prepared. And in his post-game press conferences, Kyle Shanahan kind of alluded to that. Like you could kind of hear he was a little bit angry because he said that there were some guys who didn't study as much as they should have. But he took a little responsibility saying that it is on him to make sure that they're prepared. But and that's kind of for me, I feel like I blame Kyle Shanahan because not only was there not good in-game adjustments, but also, okay, if your adjustment is to utilize Ray Ray, well, then it's on you as the head coach to make sure that you're not just coaching up Deebo Samuel, but that Ray Ray is engaged in those conversations leading up to the game. And why is Kittle not being involved more? Why can you not, adjust your play calling? I think sometimes Kyle is too scheme dependent. I felt like he was really married to the play action, but the run game wasn't
Right.
working, and it was like very clear that the Browns were not going to bite on the play action, so they just kept getting to Purdy, which is kind of what I thought would be the problem when facing the Eagles. It was just I didn't think the 49ers would face it yet. But someone we're kind of leaving out when it comes to the loss because championship teams, even in the face of adversity, if they get into a dogfight, usually they find a way to come back and win. And it can be an ugly win. And if the 49ers won at the very end, because Brock Purdy, I think you made a case that it wasn't so much Brock Purdy, it was more Ayuk.
Yeah.
Put them in a position to win the game at the end, and unfortunately, Jake Moody missed 2 of his field goals in the game, and the story would be a lot different if he made one of those, because it would be a story of adversity and struggle. Like, we would still mention everything that we mentioned, but it'd have this triumphant ending, and unfortunately, it does not look like that. So Jake Moody, how do you feel about him after this game? What is your confidence in him moving forward? And do you blame him for the loss?
Hell yeah, he takes blame. He definitely takes blame. The 49ers spent a third-round pick on this guy to be nails. And my whole thing is there's too much defending on him about Kyle Shanahan shouldn't have been conservative. Run the ball one more time, bleed the clock, or gain like 5 more yards. And it's like, yeah, there's no guarantee you're gonna gain all this yards. And even then, it's 41 yards. He's not kicking
Yeah,
from
that's like an
55.
extra point, basically.
Anything with under 50 should be damn near a lock. And I bet you if you pulled the stats of all the kickers in the league so far who have done 45 and less, 50 or less if you want to go, whatever margins we need to go, I'm pretty sure it's going to round out to like 95% of makes. That should have been a lock. And don't give me the weather, the wind. He kicked in freaking Michigan. That was one of the credits to him that, he's kicked in Michigan. He's been in the pressure situations. Ohio State, all this play, this and that weather. Like he's a weathered player for the weather, So where was that? That's a perfect example of he was just deer in the headlights. He freaked out. He choked, and that's why you can tell. That's why it's like, to me, it's like, okay, cool. You get it closer. The problem wasn't range. He had leg. That was going to the stands. It shifted wide right. We all saw it. It shifted wide right. It wasn't. So you mean to tell me that 3 yards is going to make it different?
I was the first one was wide left. Like he overcorrected.
That tells me he's thinking about it. He's overthinking it. That's one thing that like my dad's a soccer player all the time. He says hey, he's overthinking it way too much because penalty shots in soccer versus field goal. It's like when they shank it, he always says they're overthinking it way too hard because you're trying to really perfectly place it. So every time I see someone shank it, it's like, dude, he's really trying to put an emphasis on this. So in the moment, you missed one earlier, so you're probably deflated from that. So that was you have to make that. There's no excuses there. I don't blame Shanahan for not running another play. That's a guarantee lock. That needs to go in. The earlier one, sure, because it was 50 plus, right? What was it, 54 yards? So okay, fine. You can miss that one. But this one, nah, man, you had to make that one. And that's one thing, like you said, my article you read earlier, it's like, look, who's to blame for the loss? Look, they had so much things go wrong. Your kicker was in shambles. Your quarterback was atrocious. Your run game was effective. And, you were getting kind of screwed you were getting screwed by the refs. And you still had a chance to win the game. You had a C- game, D+, dare I say, and you're still in it. That's the bright side, I would say, is that hey, sure, you got beat by an elite defense, but you were still in it. So that's a great bright side to really take away from it. Even though all these things, missed opportunities, got beat, that's great that you were still right there. And now imagine, because look, they're not going to be facing the same situation all the time against the premier defense and hopefully not getting screwed by the refs, which, by the way, I discovered that underhand passes are a thing in this league. It's when the hell did bowling become a throwing motion? Like, I didn't get that. That's the thing that pissed me off. Like, okay, like I get like shuffling, like doing those things to the side, but like I don't know. I digress. We don't have to dwell on that because it's obviously they got screwed on that point, and the Deshaun Gibson PI. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's pretty much the lesson point. Yeah, Moody takes blame for sure, and that's pretty pathetic because that's third round pick you're expecting, because you easily could have coughed up a little bit of change to get a guy who you definitely know will make that, and Robbie Gould, and then you said nah.
I'm wondering if because I kind of am worried about Jake Moody moving forward. If you watched his post game, they met him at the locker room. He looked like he was gonna cry, which obviously from a human perspective, I'm like, oh, you're like, a little boy. He's like probably is he like 20, 21? He's like a young dude, so you feel bad for him. But then like you can't be in your head like that. You got to be like, if Robbie Gould misses a
He
kick,
might already
he's
be in his
on to
head.
the next one. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm worried moving forward that either I have a question for you. Do you think if next game he misses some field goals that they will call Robbie Gould?
Hell yes, because if he's missing field goals, especially depending on how bad it is or what it is, you're missing field goals in a dome in Minnesota. You take the weather element, you take the pressure element out of it, because they should be pretty beating the Vikings convincingly, I would expect. So
we're gonna get into that, but I also
that's one thing I would say. Like, maybe not immediately after that game, they might give them another chance, because that wouldn't cost them a game. But if he costs them another game, no question he's gonna hesitate. He's gonna be like, hey, Robbie, what's it going, bud? We got some salary cap space. You want $5 million? I mean, we already played 7 games, so that's pretty much good for you.
They have $41 million in cap space. Like I keep seeing this argument online amongst fans that they don't need to pay Robbie Gould because he's too expensive and other teams aren't paying him. The Niners have the money. Like the 49ers want to win the Super Bowl. They went out and paid Javon Hargrave. They gave Nick Bosa quarterback money. Why were they like, yeah, rookie kicker? I know all the data says that rookie kickers.
They probably could get him for like 4, 3.5, since it's already been like half a season at this point. And yeah, I don't think there's no question.
If there's a pivotal playoff game that they need a kicker, like this is exaggerating and they're not going to do this, but pay him $10 million. Like, how much is a playoff win? How much is a Super Bowl win worth to you? How much is the first seed worth to you? Because you just lost a regular season game. They were in position to win that game. They would be the only undefeated team in the NFL right now because the Eagles ended up losing. Like, these things, they add up and they are important. And I feel like people, they don't want to get too much on the kicker, and they're like, well, you can't get in a position to have it, so your kicker needs to win. And it's like, well, first of all, earlier in the game, if he would have done it, they wouldn't have been in that position. So it's not like only at the end of the game. But second of all, in 2021, the Packers year, I was talking to Eric Crocker about this. All of the playoff games were decided by a field goal, all of them. So like when you get into colder weather games, lower scoring, better defense, like you're going to have to rely
more pressure.
I feel like they can't just go, they can't be like, we're going to win the Super Bowl, but like not rely on a kicker. Like I'm frustrated.
And then third of all, he's a kicker. That's what he's supposed to freaking do. What do you mean? Don't put him in that situation. No. What do you mean don't put him in the situation? That's what he's paid to do. You think he's just there to kick off and do point after attempts? He's paid to freaking make 40-yard damn near chip shots. No one's talking about 50. If it was 55, the sting wouldn't have been as lethal. It still would have been stung like, damn, he should have made it. But 41 yards. 41 yards.
Even that though, even the 54 one, I feel like maybe I'm just still mad at him, but I'm being harsher because like the only reason that they went out and got him supposedly versus Robbie Gould is because they were like, okay, we need someone who has a stronger, like someone younger, someone cheaper, someone who can, because Robbie Gould maybe would have made the 40-yard one, but he wouldn't have made the longer one. And so it's like, you're here because you're supposed to be more talented and better, and you're just clearly not. And I don't know. So
that's why getting kickers, like, and people don't view maybe third round picks or even second round picks as such a weighted pick, but like, no, every day one, day 2 picks, round 2 and 3 are pretty heavily weighted. At day 3, who gives a shit? Like, who cares about those picks? It's all about day 1 and day 2. So you vested a pretty adequate third pick, which you could have got probably an offensive lineman to groom at some point at left or right tackle.
On the Browns. Do you know this? On the Browns, lining up against Nick Bosa.
DeJuan Jones, yeah. I don't know. Was he there still? I don't remember if he was.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Damn.
He was.
Yeah.
So the
I
49ers
think I remember
chose Jake Moody, who just lost them a game and potentially could lose them a much more important game. But all games are important when you want that number 1 seed. But yeah, they chose Jake Moody, a rookie kicker, even though they had a reliable kicker that made the important kicks, and they did not get an offensive lineman that just held his own against Nick Bosa. I know Nick Bosa did perform decently well at the end. He made a pivotal sack at the very end. But for most of the game, he wasn't. I'm not going to go on him, Nick Bosa. But the guy didn't do terrible. He was starting. So, yeah. Frustrated. So that's why when we go for who's to blame, I feel like you have to go back to Kyle Shanahan and like the organization, because maybe certain players weren't prepared. Maybe Brock Purdy didn't play very well. Jake Moody should have made his kick, but it's like, why is Jake Moody here? Why, I feel like it all can go back to Kyle Shanahan.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with a little bit of is the sky falling? Do you see this? I think week to week in this league, the narratives change so much. Last week we were, on here debating, is Christian McCaffrey going to win MVP? Should Brock Purdy win MVP? Has Kyle Shanahan changed? And like now he's a whole new man. Will the 49ers go undefeated? And I think coming off this game, people are like, okay, well, this was a real test for the 49ers and this is how they did and blah, blah, blah. Does this change your expectations for this team moving forward? Do you still think that they are in contention to win a Super Bowl? Does this maybe change your opinion on because I kind of want to get into this later, but on how maybe Kyle Shanahan handles adversity? Because I think we've been saying the 49ers can probably get back to the big moment, but we're not really going to know if Kyle Shanahan is a new man until we're at that moment and we see how he handles, I was going to say being behind, but even being up 10, just see how he handles the moment in general. But yeah, does this change how you feel about the 49ers moving forward for the rest of the season?
No, not at all. And if anyone does, they're being way too overreaction, because literally every week anyone can lose to any team. And I think one thing that might have been even overlooked, and I'm always been a big proponent on this, is when you have a build-up to a game, like the 49ers had going to that Dallas game, first of all, it's Dallas, 49ers Dallas, playoff game from last year, playoff game from the year before. They're talking hella smack. It's prime time. You go up this mountain and put yourself on such a high to build it up. And even though the 49ers weren't talking, they said it was just another game. They're saying that, but of course they're getting giddy. They're getting excited for this one. Hell, we just saw the Browns imitate the 49ers' entrance. Yeah, why? Okay. They're hyped for this game, but people are hating on them because they did that. Like, what is this, a rivalry? Like, no, this is how you hype yourself up. You're juiced to face a good opponent because everyone counted you out, rightfully so, and you proved everyone wrong, and you created a fat upset. So good on them. That's how you get yourself hyped up. The 49ers most likely did the same thing. Usually this is more closer to mid or late season when you face a good opponent and you face such a like think back to 2019 when the Niners lost to a lowly Falcons team. Like, where the hell did that come from? They just came from a freaking who they beat? They beat someone impressively, the Saints, I think, or whoever they beat, and then they come back and it's like, oh, they're gonna beat the Falcons, no joke. And it's like, yeah, like that's the thing. You get up to such a high that the crash comes down. It's like going from the Cowboys to the Browns on the road. It's like night and day. Like, who gives hype for that? Not saying they overlooked them or underestimated them, but in terms of energy, like you invest and invigorate yourself so much in that week before that the fall off is pretty substantial, I would say. And so I think that's always a big proponent of things I would see for every team, not just the 49ers, for every team. That's why there's always, like, you look on every playoff caliber team or Super Bowl winners, it's like, damn, how'd they lose to this team in week 14? And it's like, well, they're probably chalking it up whether it's ready for the playoffs, stuff like that. Now, this one was a little early, but at least the Browns actually had an elite defense. So no panic from me. Anyone who does that is like getting way too weird. Same thing if you're out on Purdy, you're a little weird on that. Like, it's like, hey, like, I'm just criticizing him in the game because no duh. The same way that we praise them, spent all this time praising him for those wins and his performance, gotta do the same thing when he looks absolutely atrocious. So not worried about him, not worried about anyone. The only real worry now is what we just talked about with Jake Moody.
Yeah. I feel like I agree. I think I like to kind of overreact sometimes and like really get into the week to week narratives. But when it comes to my overall feelings, I agree. I think there's a difference between like looking at a game critically and because that's what the 49ers are doing right now in their office. They're not like, we're gonna get them next time. Like they're, looking
Right.
down and seeing, okay, where did we mess up? Who messed up? Who can we trust? What do we need to fix going forward? So I think it is important to do that. I don't necessarily think that my expectation changed, but I also don't think maybe I was as confident as some like I didn't think we're 100% going to win the Super Bowl or the 49ers are 100% going to win the Super Bowl going into this game. So that's why I feel like my expectations haven't changed. Now, if you did think like this is going to be an easy walk in the park to the Super Bowl, then I think this could halt those expectations a little bit. One, because we keep going back to it, but if you can't trust Drake Moody, then that will be a problem moving forward. Like the Packers, was it in 2020 or 2021 that their
True.
season came down to special teams? So, people like to say kickers don't matter, but they score the second most points on the team besides the quarterback. So, that will be an important
Kickers are
position. Now, I
people
do have.
too, Ashley. They have lives. They have souls. They have families to feed.
Oh. Well, freaking Jake Moody needs less of a soul, all right? He needs to get into some sort of flow state where he's not thinking because
Funny part is Jake
poor
Moody's
guy.
entire family was at that game too.
I know, I know, I know, I know. And
It's like,
he's
well,
like gonna
mom and pop, I'm
cry.
happy you watched me shank 2 kicks. No, just kidding. That's rude.
Do they go to all the games? Maybe they're bad
I don't
luck.
know,
Maybe
but that
that's
one made
maybe
sense.
that's
I
the
guess
reason
I
they
don't know
go
if he's
out.
from there, but he went to college in Michigan, so it's like not like it's that far or anything. But
That makes sense. But yeah, so I feel like I'm keeping an eye out on Jake Moody and what is to come out of that. And then I have my eye on Kyle Shanahan and if he's actually maybe made as much progress as people, including myself included, have given him credit for. Going forward, when he faces teams that are going to challenge him, if he loses a player, if he's in the face of adversity, is he going to kind of cripple? I felt like the decision to call 3 straight passes and not drown out any clock towards the very end was a really bad decision. I felt like there was and I know it's kind of tacky for fans to criticize play calls because we don't know exactly what was going on, but I just felt like the in-game adjustments that we've been praising him for making this year were really lacking uh, on Sunday. So hopefully moving forward he can show better adjustments. I do think I was gonna while we're talking about adjustments, an injury update is that Christian McCaffrey, they're saying right now it might be a pain tolerance thing, but I am of the belief, and I wanted to ask you, I think that they should probably hold Christian McCaffrey out. They had been utilizing him, in my opinion, way too much. I think that that's probably why Jordan Mason has looked really good. Elijah Mitchell did not look like he was in the zone at all. And I think if they maybe had been utilizing all three of them instead of only giving 90% of the carries to Christian McCaffrey anyways, then maybe those players would have been able to step up better. Kyle, like I said, was kind of criticizing the backups for not, going in and setting the world on fire. It's like, okay, well, if they're out of sorts because they haven't been
Mhm.
in a while, that might be an issue. So I think if there's any pain, if Christian McCaffrey has to play through pain, that they should sit him for the Vikings game, and I might even say the Bengals game because there is a bye week after that. And if you could have a full 3 week fully healed, rested Christian McCaffrey coming in week 10, that could be so beneficial for the playoffs and for the games that really matter. We've kind of talked about holding. He has no problem holding Kittle and saving him. So why not save Christian McCaffrey? I know uh, Chris Forrester has said before that he's tried to hold Christian McCaffrey out and the Christian has fought to play in games. I think if there's a
Yep.
situation where the 49ers organization thinks it's a question mark, but Christian McCaffrey wants to go and, prove that he can play through injury and that he's tough. When he was on the Panthers, I know every time he had like a nick and bruise, um, Adam Schefter would always tweet about it, and I felt like Christian McCaffrey used to respond. So you can tell he's definitely defensive
Yeah.
about injuries, and he wants to prove that he's tough.
You write
But
that
if I'm the
down.
49ers, I'm saying let's conserve you. What is your opinion on him playing this week, sitting out for 1 week, sitting out until after the bye week? Do you have an opinion on Christian McCaffrey and his injury update. It was from Matt Mayoko. There's no MRI yet. I also have a theory that maybe that they already have the MRI, but if it's bad news, they might be wanting the Vikings to still prepare for Christian McCaffrey, and so they might not want to put it out yet. But according to Matt Mayoko, it was a pain tolerance thing. Do you think that Christian McCaffrey should sit, not sit, sit for a long time, sit for a short amount of time? What's your opinion on him?
Yeah, but it's looking like if we're talking about pain tolerance for this week, maybe probably sit him for this week. I don't know about the Bengals game. You probably want to play him against the Bengals, but this week you should. It's easy for us to say, but I don't think Kyle Shanahan thinks that way. I think he sees like I need Christian McCaffrey out there. But I kind of wish he would feel confident in Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell more that 1-2, no matter who gets the start. I know he said Elijah Mitchell will be the lead dog, probably because Jordan Mason is questionable as a pass pro when shotgun. But ultimately, I think they're both going to get like substantial carries, probably like Mitchell like 12 to 13, Mason like 7, 8. So ultimately, that's all that really matters is like the complementary, because it's the same thing that I've been saying, and probably you have, with like we don't need McCaffrey to get 25, like 16 to 22 is solid, like, and mix in the rest of them. So the same thing should apply to Mitchell and Mason, especially even more now because Mitchell is actually the injury-prone player here. So I think that's ultimately why I always wanted Mason to be the starter. Like, once you want to get him like more carries than Mitchell, because at least you have a chance to let him keep riding some momentum, maybe get better, and at least you know like he's not going to get hurt on the 10th carry of the game where Mitchell all of a sudden he gets a shoestring tackle and out of nowhere his elbow is hurting or something. There's always something wrong with him. He's just always getting hurt. So and his history is against him. So I think that's the case right there. But with McCaffrey, I think your theory is right that they definitely know the MRI. MRI results, you pretty much get them like same day. I mean, my knee, I pretty much had in the morning and I got it the same, like later that night, I think, no later the next morning. So he had his like what, Monday. So they definitely know it by now. And they're an NFL team. They definitely can get it within the same day. So I think they know. I think he's going to probably be out tomorrow practice, maybe even Friday, and then limited Saturday, and then just see how he feels. What's going to end up happening is like Wednesday. Wait, tomorrow? No, they're off Wednesday as well, actually, because it's Monday Night Football. So Thursday is going to be like, scheduled off day because that's what it was. Friday off, and then maybe Saturday limited. But knowing Kyle Shanahan, he's going to want to run him.
I was going to say, do you think if he does go that it'll be like a game time decision? My thing is that they might be trying to do a little bit of that chess match with the Vikings right now.
Yeah, that's always what teams are going to do. That's something that they always do. I mean, I remember they did that with Trey Lance in 2021. What team were they facing next week after the Texans? Whatever. They're facing some team. They were giving them like, it's going to be Trey. We don't know. It might be Jimmy. And then it came to be Jimmy. Just because the fact it's just such limited practice time. As you can throw off the team and make them waste 15 minutes of practice time, that's everything. Because if they're going to waste 15 minutes one day.
Christian McCaffrey, defensive coordinators spend like more than 15 minutes trying to stop him.
Like just even just a little bit of time. So that's going to be everything. And the same thing with like, the Steelers weren't going to be like, yeah, there's no way we're not going to plan for Nick Bosa. That's stupid. So, I mean, just like what you said about like, which actually reminded me of what you said earlier, like, why is he not getting McLeod more up to date? It's like, well, there's only so much practice time you can give these guys that are you going to waste several snaps getting McLeod ready on the off chance that Debo gets hurt. So yeah, it's great in theory. It kind of reminded me, I remember watching the NFC Championship game with family. It's like, why didn't Kyle Shanahan get freaking Josh Johnson prepared? That's his fault. I'm like, Jesus couldn't even make this guy elite. What are you talking about? Nothing was going to work.
It's also like once you get there,
So, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of frustration. So yeah, it's like, there's only so much practice time you can get. Like that's why it's probably a lot of sloppiness that you see around the league. And it's like, well, dude, they're only getting like an hour 15, and then they come back later, do another hour where it's just walk through. So there's only so much you can get. So I think in this case, if you can get the team preparing and wasting, that's more power to you that you can get them like, okay, we wasted all this time preparing. He's not even playing. So crap. And now they're not ready for Mason. They're not ready for Mitchell. And then that's your edge right there. But yeah, if it's a pain tolerance thing, I doubt it's going to magically go away in like 5 days when they have to play them, or 6, whatever days it is now. So I'd probably rather play on the cautionary side, but I personally think if that's going to be what I just said it's going to be, where he's out Thursday, Friday, limited Saturday, he's going to play him on Monday. I'd probably expect. And he's going to get probably 10 carries or something like that.
You think he's going to play him?
Hell yeah. I think he's going to play him. He wants to ride his guys into the ground. He's always been like that. They don't care.
But they don't need him to beat the Vikings.
I
I
think
was
it's
surprised
mainly
that
I have to wait to hear, especially hear what exactly it is. Like if it's bruised oblique, like if it's what Brock Purdy had last year, he's gonna play. Now I know you could say different
but
position.
he's a running back. He's
He's
gonna
gonna
get
get hurt a bunch of
that's
time, but
gonna
they might
hurt.
give him extra padding. And knowing McCaffrey, I mean, we just said right,
Yeah.
McCaffrey tells them he's not
I
getting
think
done.
that, but I think that they need to, I understand why McCaffrey's gonna wanna shoot through it, but I think
They're
that
gonna listen to him.
Kyle or is it Bobby Turner? Maybe it's Bobby Turner. He needs to look at Kyle Shanahan and be like, I understand. We all love Christian McCaffrey.
He's not
This
taking
is the
Bobby Turner's word
Vikings.
for
We're
anything
gonna love
about who
him
he's gonna
more
play.
in the playoffs. You think of what? What were you saying?
He's not taking Bobby Turner's word for it. I don't know. That's just the way I think Kyle operates. I don't think they should play him, especially like, more reports are going to turn up. I mean, I think before we went on, Adam Schefter did another one where he says like, hey, all injuries to Trent, Debo, and Christian McCaffrey are not expected to be long-term serious injuries at all. But all this wording about pain tolerance from Iyoko, long-term injuries means like, okay, but there is some issues there within the next probably like 3 weeks, within 3 weeks. So if that case, just rest him. Get him ready for the Bengals game. By then, maybe pain tolerance will be minimal, and then we'll go from there.
Now, do you think that would you play him against the Bengals game just because if it is a pain tolerance thing, he should be better by then, or
Should
do
be
you think
better
that
than
they
I would think,
need
but
him?
that's why it's
Do you
hard to
think
tell
that they
about
need
injuries.
him?
Everyone's different in how they recover. I mean, shoot, same thing with my injury. Like everyone's gonna be different with how they treat this. Like how do you care for yourself and stuff like that, and what's gonna be your plan. So yeah,
Yeah.
a little more information comes out, be more sprinkled in. But I think they're fine with doing the 1-2 with Mitchell and Mason. It sucks that he's not getting the start, but I mean, hey, 2019, Mostert never got a single start, and how'd that work out?
That's why I put why doesn't Kyle reward Mason? I was gonna ask you about this because I read your article, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. You started this conversation before I heard anyone else talk about it when you asked Kyle Shanahan about
I
it.
started back actually
Um,
in July too. Actually, back in the beginning of July, I
oh
said they
really? So
should
you've been like
slowly
really
phase
on
them
this.
out, slowly phase
Yeah.
out Mitchell for Mason, just based on number one health. And if you compare the stats, I know stats is like such a cut and dry, like
But when you
doesn't tell the whole
watch Mason,
story.
he looks yeah, go ahead.
But when you watch them, they look kind of nearly identical. Now maybe Mitchell might be the more rip off gained explosive back, but to me it's like, yeah, I'd rather just invest in the guy who's a little younger, more raw, and doesn't get hurt. I like to rely on people.
Yeah.
I want to rely on someone that I know if I run him 10 to 15 times, I don't have to worry about, great, now I'm in the situation where McCaffrey, Debo, what I'm going to do. And I'm not saying Mason's like obviously nowhere near that impact player and they should be able to survive without him. But, it's just the fact that like, oh, great, now Mitchell's gone. Now I got Mason. And who's behind Mason? Shoot, Kyle Juszczyk, because, well, TDP's probably getting activated if they don't play McCaffrey, but still.
Yeah. He's on the team, which is just hilarious. We love third round picks here at the 49ers. Uh, Jesus. But no, I mean, I feel like if I was Mason, I'd be a little bit butthurt. I feel like Mason embodies everything that the 49ers try to get their players to do. He's extremely physical. He's always prepared. I mean, Kyle Shanahan was just kind of ripping on Ray McLeod in his post game. Not that he said him by name, but I feel like it was just kind of obvious. But Jordan Mason doesn't follow like Kyle said that Elijah Mitchell had like deserved that spot behind Christian McCaffrey with his play, especially his rookie year. But I mean, years have gone on and he hasn't. He's proven that he can't stay healthy, and I feel bad for him as a person, obviously. But anytime Jordan Mason has been given the opportunity, he has stepped up and risen to the occasion. He doesn't shy away from contact. He's extremely physical, like all the like core tenets of traits that the Shanahan regime looks for in their players. I feel like he embodies, and I just don't understand. I guess I'm a little bit confused with the hesitancy for letting Mason kind of take over. I know that Mitchell kind of has a soft spot in Kyle's heart, I guess. He's always talked about him really highly since his rookie year. But I just feel like if there's someone on the team that is constantly meeting stepping up to the occasion and meeting the challenge, I feel like it's Jordan Mason. And I think Kyle just is like, yeah, he exists, but he doesn't really.
But you missed one
Why do
other
you
core that Kyle Shanahan values the most.
the
Blocking, and that's the same thing he does with his receivers, his tight ends, and it's like no block, no rock. That's literally first and foremost. I mean, why Juwan Jennings blocks his ass off and he only gets
he
like one
does.
target a game. So I mean, he makes them count. So it's like even if you do block, it's like you're not guaranteed to get no rock either. But the fact that Mason, like, and I can recall 2 plays, I don't remember which one situation, but 2 plays where Mason's like he's out there and it's okay, like that wasn't really a great pass pro, buddy. So seeing that disrupts, the passing game. So that's probably the reason why, like, there's a little frustration from your end and others. Like, why are we passing it 3 times and it looks like pressure? And it's like, you know what? It's Mason's not getting these his assignments right or executing at a level that he should be at. And it's like, bro, if I can't play you to block, what makes you feel confident that I'm going to just consistently run you? Like, it can't, if you want like the dessert, you have to go through the freaking, like, the trials of all this, like, the trials of tribulation, whatever the word is called, like you have to go
of tribulations.
Something like, yeah, you have to go through pretty much. You have to go through the mud if you want to get to like the good land of just like running the football. Like you just have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like there's no debate. You have to do that.
You have to eat your broccoli before you can have cake. I feel that.
Even though I hate broccoli.
I love broccoli. This is a TMI, but I have stomach issues, so I can't have broccoli right now. Can't have broccoli or Brussels sprouts. And if you bake them, put like garlic, like seasoning, onion, paprika, salt, pepper, cut them up. You're missing out. You're missing out.
Before all that, you
should
throw them in
eat
the
them
garbage. But anyways.
Anyway, what's your favorite? Do you like vegetables? What's your favorite vegetable?
Yeah, I like vegetables. What is my favorite?
I don't know, you shit on broccoli, so.
Honestly, everything. I mean, potatoes, corn, carrots are dope.
I just asked you to name a vegetable, and you said I like potatoes. That was so.
I like zucchini. Zucchini's my favorite.
Really good. Zucchini's bomb. How do you? I do the same thing that I do with broccoli. I like to cut it up and bake it. Do you fry it in a pan? No one cares about your zucchini. Stuff.
I'll bake it too. I bake it too.
You can put some Parmesan cheese in it. I'm Italian, so I used to have my grandma growing up. She used to put like cheese on the. It made it not healthy. You get some zucchini bread. I made some brownies the other day with pumpkin because fall and stuff. Even though it's super nice outside, thank goodness. Because I hate the cold weather. But you can make zucchini bread, shred it up, put a ton of chocolate chips in it, a bunch of oil. My grandma used to. You gotta get yourself an Italian grandma, all right? They're game
brownies. What?
Yeah, so good. You've heard of like zucchini bread, right?
Right.
It's like similar. Anyways, anyways, to kind of look forward, the 49ers are gonna play the Vikings. I don't want to come on here and say I'm not at all worried because I was not at all worried about winning against the Browns, although I was prepared for the Browns defense to be a huge challenge for the 49ers, but I just thought with how poorly their offense is, and I think that that's important for fans to remember when we're talking about, okay, we didn't have Debo, we didn't have Christian McCaffrey, the Browns were on their 3rd string quarterback, missing Nick Chubb. Can you name, like, their offensive weapons are not thrilling. So I do think that's a bit disingenuous to be like, well, the Niners were missing their guys. The Browns were also missing their guys, and they were able to get to 19 points. Mm-hmm. But moving forward, speaking of missing people and injuries and people holding out, Justin Jefferson is on IR, so he's not going to be there. How do you feel about going against this Vikings team next Monday or on Monday?
So easy. I'm feeling what you felt against the Browns. But for this game, which I didn't feel that way. I knew that was going to be a gutted out tough game for the Browns. This one,
I know. I messaged you during it, and you were like, "Oh, I like this was before the loss." But when it was
going to be a gritted one, and the Browns one, the key was going to be the defense, and they did their thing. They had 2 turnovers. They put them in scoring position. One of them they capitalized with a touchdown. The other one, Jake Moody missed a 54-yard field goal, and then the third one should have been a sack fumble, but apparently the ref said no. But I digress. This one, there's nothing really to fear too much from the Vikings offensively. Like their best weapon is Jordan Addison now, KJ Osborne, it's TJ Hawkinson really, but you put Fred around him, Fred's going to be able to like clamp him up. I think it's going to be a long day for the Vikings. I think the 49ers after losing are going to be pissed off. They're going to come out. They should get back to their 30-point scoring ways or just about. And I don't see how the Vikings put up more than 17 points on the 49ers. I really don't. Running the ball is not the strong suit. The the 3 games I watched the Vikings this year, their blocking has looked bad. It looked pretty much like the 49ers. That's the one thing about the offensive line. People wanted to talk about the pressure they were allowing. No, it was the run blocking that was really getting blown up against the Browns. That's why McCaffrey was so inefficient. That's not going to be the case against the Vikings. They don't have too many disruptors. I know Danielle Hunter's there and such, but it's like, what can one man do versus like a huge formation? I guess at that point, the only way it's going to hold them back is who's going to play for the 49ers. Is Trent Williams playing? Is Deebo Samuel playing? Is Christian McCaffrey playing? And even without those 3, I think they should still win fairly easily.
Even without Trent?
Even without Trent, I don't think I don't think they'll be able to score like a 30, and I don't think it will be like a sound, convincing victory, but I say fairly easily. Like it'd probably be like a 23-14 outing or 23-17 outing, like a 1-score win or something like that. Because ultimately the defense is still intact. No one's missing from that defense. They're still amazing. And Kirk, throughout his years against the 49ers, has looked abysmal. So I'm expecting that fully to be put on display. And Kirk is what, 2-10 in Monday Night Football or something like that?
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Kirk, the bright lights go, and he's scary. He's like a roach.
Do you think, just to feed some drama narratives, do you think that if Purdy can, like we were kind of talking about who do we blame for the loss, do you think if Kyle Shanahan maybe could be side-eyeing Purdy right now and being like, you're only good when I'm kind of giving you the answer to the test, and when you have to kind of make something on your own, you look a lot more human and a lot more better. Could he, if Purdy continues to look average, ordinary, if let's say Christian McCaffrey, Deebo, Trent, they're all out for 2 games. If he continues to look kind of ordinary, maybe floats back to earth a little bit, are there going to be any heating up rumors about Kyle calling his old love back?
Hell yeah, there is.
Like he's going to see Kirk today. You know, when you haven't seen your ex in a while, and then you run into them at like a high school reunion and start reminiscing on all the times that you had. Is that going to be them on
Kirk's going to run into him in the post-game tunnel and be like, I could throw better than that, right? And he's going to be like, well, Kirk, the things I do with you in my offense. No,
That's no, but yeah, so you don't see a Kyle side-eyeing Purdy and looking for maybe his backup Steve Young, or for
bring it up that
sending little love letters to Kirk Cousins.
When I was with Grant last Friday, it's funny you bring that up, that how he mentioned about like Shannon Sharp's system quarterback, and he was speculating like, I wonder if he got that from Mike Shanahan, and Mike Shanahan didn't get that from Kyle. And I pushed back on that in a sense, like, I don't think Mike's necessarily getting it from his son, because how much time is Kyle really going to talk to his dad throughout the week in terms of like,
doesn't Mike have like,
I mean, in terms of like discussing his players, I think they're more so talking about like, dad, some help in terms like that. But like in terms of like gossiping like that, I think Mike, in terms of he kind of is speaking for his son, is like, I understand that's my system in a way that it's similar, and so he's feeding him that. So in that sense, like it's like wondering, like I think Mike thinks that like, hey, it's my son's system, because no duh, that's my son, of course. And
yeah,
like Brock Purdy's right.
Stand up more for like his son versus.
I don't think it's true so much that Brock is just pretty much like a robot. Yeah, he is like a robot, but I've already seen enough instances where he's not just a one-read guy. When he's there, he frolics and panics. There's been too many instances, and he does, with his own ability of just like scrambling or just shooting deep, or even if it's not there, he knows how to reset and find another guy. So he's definitely more than that. But yeah, if he looks poor in this game, that's when the love lust is really going to start to fall down more. That's why, again, like back to the beginning, is like, all right, let's see how he bounces back, because that was a poor game. He played a big role in the loss. Now you're facing a defense that's a middling the pack defense that's nowhere near the same caliber as the Browns. Yes, you'll be without probably a weapon or two, and maybe even your security blanket at offensive line, but you still should be able to go out there and excel and look good. That's going to be the real point of like, all right, is he really just a proponent of, I have a bunch of weapons that make me look good? Which, of course, I guess is going to be the point where everyone makes, right, last week, like, oh, if you take away this player, he looks average. And it's like, I guess people are going to get their wishes correct that they were saying last week. If you take Deebo McCaffrey away, well, we might just see that. But then again, it's like, what do most elite quarterbacks look like? What would Justin Herbert look like if he took Keenan Allen away and Austin Eckler? I mean, shit, he had those players last night, and he wasn't looking great at all. So it's just, I just really want to know what he looks like bouncing back from that game and without him.
I know you think that they're going to utilize Christian McCaffrey if it's only like a pain tolerance thing, but I would be really interested to see. I kind of want them to be out, but instead of it being in game, since Kyle struggled a little bit with like utilizing his other players, give him an entire week to kind of scheme up plays for IU, especially against the Vikings. Their secondary is not going to be nearly as good. Did this game? This is another side note, but did this game make you side eye Ayuk a little bit against the Browns? He wasn't able to. He was clamped down a couple times and missed a couple of big plays. He also made the we gave Purdy credit for bouncing back at the very end. Ayuk also did that. Without Ayuk,
Yeah.
they don't get in position for Jake Moody to fuck it up at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. No, I think Ayuk was pretty much the deep one that he could have caught and most likely walks in to the end zone. So they had two practically walk-in end zone plays that they failed on. And with Ayuk dropping that one, and then with Purdy overthrowing McCaffrey drifting down the sideline on that fade route, because there was no one left or left of him or in front of him, I think he would have walked into that end zone too, or sprinted in, I guess. So no, it didn't really side on me just for that one drop. I know it looks like he dropped a bunch of times, but he pretty much was doing a lot of acrobatic stuff. I thought he dropped more times, but on some clips that I saw,
PFF only gave him one drop, which is crazy. I thought
it was the deep one. It's because the other ones, like the second one I thought he dropped was one where he had to lean out. I thought he had both hands on it. He barely got one hand on it when the ball was like this. I was like, oh, I thought that I was crediting him for that drop. So I think the only drop was the deep one we all saw, which that if PFF is backing up that, then I'm also thinking, okay, then it really was like a lot of inaccuracy issues from Purdy. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was because they had to make more, thread the needle throws that were more pressurized. So this one, it should be fine. I mean, I don't recall Brian Flores likes to call a lot of man. I feel like he does, but I could be wrong. But either way, they don't have necessarily the talent to do that, and they should it should be fine.
I agree. I think that we're going to see a bounce back game from Brock Purdy. Just for story narratives, I think it would be fun if Purdy struggled and Kirk just went off, because that would just be a great week of just.
That would be, because it's starting to get started. Starting tomorrow, people are going to talk about it, or Thursday.
Yeah, and Kyle and Kirk could hug at the end, the little pat on the back.
There's going to be a million of those pictures and clips from Monday Night Football throughout the game. Like, oh, back in 2013, Kyle and Kirk Cousins. Like, Jesus, it's just like every time when the Niners play the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. Like, did you know that Aaron Rodgers grew up a 49ers fan? I didn't know that. I needed to be told 30 times that for it to get drilled into my head. Maybe if you do it 31 more times, I'll remember for sure.
Exactly. Same thing whenever they play. Where was it? Where it was like, I think it was when they were all in the playoffs, where it was McVay, Kyle, LaFleur, and they always show the picture of them in Washington. But I agree. I think that this game will be a get-right game for them. I want to go through the comments really quick, because this guy said Purdy's definitely elite. He doesn't kick field goals. So when we were asking who does he blame, he blames Jake Moody. I think Jose and I hopefully laid out a good argument that it was just a total team collapse. But yes, if Jake Moody makes 2 of 3 of his field goals, it is a different story. However,
Purdy doesn't kick field goals, but he throws touchdowns.
If Purdy makes the wide open throw to Christian McCaffrey, then it doesn't matter if Jake Moody misses
Purdy doesn't kick field goals, but he throws touchdowns, which he had one on the money could have had one on the money to McCaffrey, but he missed. So he's not elite by any stretch of the imagination. We're just crowning elite players after like 10 starts now. Come on.
Okay. And then this guy, I am not going to try to pronounce that, said, the loss against the Browns really shook them. The vibe was horrible after the loss. The 49ers will lose the following 3 games and end up with a 10. So you're not feeling well. I didn't feel like the vibe was that bad. Fred Warner came out, and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa had similar statements kind of saying that they didn't deserve to win. They could have won in the end, but they didn't deserve. They were outplayed, but that they were going to learn from this. I think the entire team, Kyle Shanahan, kind of talked about them potentially needing some adversity. Maybe they needed a little bit of a wake-up call. I think they were feeling pretty high on themselves. I think that this could potentially be an excellent loss. I kind of assumed that the Eagles might be a loss. And if instead they can learn from this loss and go in and win against that Eagles team, I mean, it's way better to lose to an AFC team than to an NFC team. Obviously, still have to face the Eagles, the Seahawks, everything. But I think, if you want to be more glass half full about it, you could say it was a horrible loss, but luckily, it's not going to affect them in the standings too much. Seahawks loss Eagles lost. It's an AFC team.
And it
They
took
can
everything
definitely,
going wrong for them to lose.
yeah, they can definitely bounce back. I think injuries would be the most important thing to, that could really affect their season long term. But from everything we're hearing for everyone, even if they hold them out just for healing purposes, it's a pain tolerance thing. It's not like Jose over here who can't walk yet. No ACLs yet. Knock on so much
I
wood.
find this comment funny. It's like it really shook the team. If this, you mean to tell me this loss to the Browns in Week 6 is going to shock the team, but not the 2019 Super Bowl, not the 2021 NFC Championship loss, and not the Eagles loss from 10 months ago. This is the one that shakes them finally. Come on.
Yeah. So,
Come on. Losses happen.
So losses happen. It'll be okay. But I had a really great show with you, Jose. Do you want to debate Drake today, or do you want to do it next week? Because this show is already an hour, so we can do it next week. We can tease people at some point. I'm gonna give Jose a lesson on why Drake is still a top artist in the world.
Okay, you sound prepared.
I think your tweet. I think his tweet was something that because I wanted to be specific.
He hasn't been good since
You said it was in the last 5 years that he's really dropped off. So I made sure all of my examples and songs and everything were stuff that is more relevant, not from 5 years ago. I find that very ironic because Scorpion came out less than 5 years ago, and I think that is potentially Drake's best album. So at a different time, maybe next week.
Yeah, because you sound prepared. I need to list more things because I can go off for like a little bit, but if you're gonna, I can't have like 500 words, so you're 1,500.
So next week we will. That'll be a good teaser. We'll come back.
Drake is trash can.
We will come back. We will see if Purdy bounced back like Jose and I predict. If Kyle Shanahan tries to run back to his old love, Kirk, or if he is still happy and on his honeymoon with Brock Purdy.
You know why the Niners lost? They listened to Drake before the game. That's what happens. You get into that soft little simp mood. It makes you not want to play.
This is not Drake, but I don't know. Drake is a rapper and rappers beef. So now I'm thinking about beefs, and you were just talking about the Browns and how they listened to the boombox and they were fighting before the game. And somehow all of that made my brain think of CJ Gardner-Johnson, who is a Lions player. The Lions are not a team that the 49ers are playing until probably the playoffs, because the Lions are also 5-1.
I hope that's a matchup, and I hope the Lions are legit by then, because that's going to be such a sweet one. But CJ Gardner-Johnson's on IR, so I don't know what he's talking shit for. I think that's funny.
So really quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, when the Browns and 49ers got into that pregame fight, there was a video clip where Debo's kind of going up into people's faces, and then he steps out of the way, and Trent Williams
comes and saves him.
Who goes flying. CJ Gardner-Johnson comments on that and basically says that Debo went running and is trying to get Trent Williams to do his cleanup for him. They've gone back and forth on social media about it. And then most recently, earlier today, CJ Gardner-Johnson went on his Instagram live, called Debo a running back, said that he doesn't know why he got paid, and he's lucky he got paid. Really had a lot of trash talk for Debo, which I found extremely surprising. Also said that they were friends, but now that they're not friends and don't come up. So
it's from the Eagles game. That's it.
NFL script writers trying to hype up the Lions. Is this all because of last year's NFC Championship game? Why is that happening between those two players?
Yeah, it's just from the NFC Championship game. Because remember, there was a lot of talking, I think, a little bit, especially after, right? So it was never ending after that point. So he's pretty much just talking on that smack. Because remember how Debo pretty much went on that podcast like the same week. He said like all their players are trash and Ayuk was cooking them, which kind of was. But
and said that they were going to said that they were going to cook that. He said they were going to cook that secondary too. So that probably felt personal to
CJ safety on that team. So
yeah. But so hopefully you think the 49ers and the Lions might match up, and
I hope they do. That's
CJ Gardner-Johnson is criticizing Debo for being injured. You just said he's on IR?
I'm 99% sure he's been on IR for like 2 weeks now.
So hopefully both of them can kind of shut up, get not injured, and then we can face them in the playoffs. That's hilarious. I didn't realize that he was also on IR.
Yeah, that's the thing that's funny. It's like if you're not playing,
injured and then make fun of a different player for being injured.
That's the one thing I had a problem with. It's like you're not playing. What are you doing? Maybe that's why he's
Yeah.
talking shit. That's all that's because he has all that time on his
Bored.
hands.
Bored. All right. So we'll keep an eye out on that. I've been liking watching the Lions, that their kind of turnaround. But we'll keep an eye on Goff and see if he's just a system quarterback and if Brock Purdy's just a system quarterback, and how they fight back against the Vikings. It is Jose and I's prediction that they will crush the Vikings, and it won't be a big deal. But I had such a good show with you Jose, and with everyone watching. Really excited next week to come out, and hopefully it'll be a better week for 49er fans, and we can school Jose on some good music. Okay. Bye, guys. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow Jose on Twitter and read all his articles on SI.com. He's been putting out a million a day. They're really stepping it up over there. So be sure to watch and to read. I should be back on. I don't think I have a show tomorrow, but I'll be putting out little clips tomorrow, and then I have a show with Marco on Thursday, and for the rest of the week, we have stuff going on too. So have a good one. Bye. Always take a weird amount of time to end these.